Welcome everyone to Beyond the Grid with me, Tom Clarkson. It's the end of another year, and what a year it's been, both on track, where Formula One crowned a new world champion in Max Verstappen, and on this podcast, where once more we're delighted in bringing you some wonderful conversations about the sport we love. As has become a Christmas tradition, we thought we'd play you some clips from the season just gone. They're not highlights, because I love speaking to all of the guests. Think of these more as moments that left me open-mouthed, or made me laugh, or were just really interesting. So grab a mince pie and a drink, and let's do some reminiscing together about Beyond the Grid 2021.
We're going to have one lap of racing to decide the championship in 2021. Down the inside, Hamilton sees him coming. It's a late lunge by Verstappen, who takes the lead of the race. Verstappen now snatches the championship trophy from Lewis Hamilton. They have shared a brilliant championship battle, but the championship can only be won by one, and it's going Dutch in 2021. Max Verstappen, for the first time ever, is champion of the world.
Max Verstappen, you are the world champion! The world champion! Max, we are so proud of you.
Oh my God, guys. I love you so much.
You have driven like a champion all year. You deserve that. We needed a bit of luck. You got it. You made it happen. And we love you. We absolutely love you.
First up, I thought it only right that we give a nod to the newly crowned world champion. And for that, I chatted to Red Bull boss Christian Horner back in June about how his star driver has evolved over the last 5 years.
I think the maturity, the experience that he has now, he's got his feet on the ground. He's just a no bullshit racer. That's all he cares about. That's all he wants to do. And when you put him in the car, he's going to give you 110%. That's what makes him, I think, so exciting to watch, that you just know Imola this year, starting P3 on the grid, he's not going to be there at the first corner.
It's lights out and away we go. Verstappen gets an excellent reaction. Verstappen and Hamilton wheel to wheel going into the Tamburello chicane. Hamilton is forced wide and he's lost a little bit of bodywork as well. Verstappen leads the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix.
That kind of thing, you just know you're going to get 110% from him.
Is he better able to play the percentage game now?
Yeah, I think so. I think but with that level of maturity, I think he's demonstrated that, certainly in some of the races this year.
When I look back to 2016 and that Barcelona Grand Prix, he was so young.
Yeah.
What were you thinking? I know we all knew he was good.
We were thinking, how the hell did he do that? Because we thought we'd put Daniel on the better strategy, yes. And Max managed to convert a one-stop or whatever it was at the time into a win. I'm thinking, how did he make the tyres last? Did he just do that? And I remember it was the most surreal thing. He'd never even sat in the car before the weekend. It just chucks him straight in and he boom, first victory.
It was mental, wasn't it?
Fairy tale stuff.
Almost as mental, you could say, as the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in which Max clinched the world title. He's only 24, and it'll be fascinating to see how good he can become in the coming years. As good as Max was in 2021, his car, the RB16, and his team were fantastic too. Which takes me back to a conversation I had with Sergio Perez in March about the design genius Adrian Newey and the guys and girls in Milton Keynes who were his new workmates.
He's obviously a very clever guy, but it's also a racing driver. He's like, when you talk to him, you're feeling that you are speaking to a racing driver that has just driven the car, and it's like in a way talking to Max, because he knows what's going on, he knows what's happening with the car, he knows what tools you can use, and that's pretty impressive, to be honest, from Adrian, what I found from him, and the speed to do things is also extremely impressive.
Everyone talks about his ferocious competitiveness. Drivers are competitive, that's a given, right? But Adrian is just like you. Is that come across in him as well?
It's just what I said, that he's such a competitive guy, such a racer. He's a pure racer, racing driver. He he really wants to make this work.
And he's been, I mean, obviously he's an aerodynamic genius, but and he's designed racing cars, but he's also been a race engineer as well. So he sort of, there's not an area of it that he doesn't understand.
Exactly. You know, I think that he has been through so much in his career, through different phases. He also drives cars, you know.
Have you seen his car collection, by the way? He's got an amazing car
collection.
Yeah,
he does. I haven't seen it. I look forward to that. But I just heard from Christian that he is also a racing driver, you know. Once I took him to Silverstone to test, and he's 100% fearless, you know. It was a bit damp into, I think it was Cops. And he definitely tried to go through it flat, you know, and the car was like moving around, and he's just a very confident race driver.
Yeah. Complete fearlessness is probably not a great thing, is it? In a racing driver, you need a little bit of self-preservation.
Yeah.
But
well, he must trust a lot his driving capacities.
True, that is true. Now look, this is your first team move in 7 years. Does it feel slightly odd to be learning a new environment, or are you quite invigorated by that?
It feels it definitely feels weird, you know, because you've been for 7 years with the same people working with, and it is a change, but a change that I've enjoyed a lot. You know, I've come to a great team. The team has welcomed me massively, and it's been very enjoyable experience to work with this group of people.
Checo's had a very promising first season with the team, with that win in Baku and 4th place in the Drivers' Championship. And might I suggest, Checo, that you take some time over the winter to check out Adrian's car collection. What made 2021 such a thrilling season was the rivalry between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, and also Red Bull and Mercedes, who went on to take a record-breaking 8th consecutive Constructors' title. I really enjoyed getting the Brackley boys together in April, the Brackley boys being 4 of the longest-serving engineers at Mercedes: Ron Meadows, Andrew Shovlin, Simon Cole and James Vowles. And they know only too well what makes Lewis Hamilton so special.
Natural talent. He's got an incredible work ethic as well, but he is the whole package. He can't find any weakness in Lewis. Over time, he's just got stronger.
Where's he got stronger?
It's not one area, it's the fact that every time he doesn't win a race, he goes and works out why he didn't win it, and why the next time that happens, he'll win it instead of whoever else did. And it's this kind of relentless understanding and improving process that he goes through that I think must be quite exhausting, because it never really stops. But as Ron said, he just keeps getting better and better, and he's obviously broken all records, but to see a driver who's achieved so much still working for every win like it's their first, which is really what he does. But you can see why he is where he is, and it is down to hard work, dedication, and just this relentless urge to keep winning.
James, is he a strategist's dream, in that whatever you concoct in the middle of a race, you know he can deliver whatever you need?
Whatever mistakes James makes, Lewis
is
able to fix them.
I mean, for clarity.
That's how I read that as well.
Yeah. Lewis, I need 18 qualifying laps from you now. You know he's just going to deliver.
Where his strengths lie, so Shove summed up brilliantly. He never gives up, ever. You don't see his head drop in the race. He doesn't think, I'm 12th, I'm going to give up now. He just wants to know what's ahead of him, how to keep fighting. In fact, often we're the ones that have to tell him, you need to just accept where you are now, because what's in front of you is just not achievable anymore. And that strength is what allows you, even when you're on the back foot, to push forward and fight his way through. There were so many races that all of us have been privileged to have with him where he's not the leading car out the two, and he's the one fighting tooth and nail at the back, and you know he'll give everything to you. He's not going to back off, he's not going to give down. He may be frustrated and upset that you've made a mistake and put him into a situation that's difficult, but he delivers on it, and that's what he's done in all the time that we've been with him.
And is Lewis an inspirational character? You say, James, that you've got better over the years. Is it because the ethos to improve permeates down from the top, from Lewis, from...
So first of all, we are definitely incredibly privileged to have a leadership that acts in the same way as they talk. So in other words, there is a no blame culture, and there's a culture of accepting that you need all of those around you, and that permeates from Toto absolutely within the team and the environment. And we are led by, in all the time that I've been in the sport, the best TP that you could imagine, really. In terms of Lewis and what he brings to the party, they're all different. Every single driver and what they've brought is different. And I don't think it's one individual. I think it's how they form together in the culture we've created here. That's why we are who we are today and how we work together. So what I mean by that is one individual isn't strong enough to completely change the dynamics of thousands of people that are building this car.
Did Lewis fit into the culture here immediately, or has he had to adapt? Have you seen him adapt?
Oh, he's definitely, I'll speak on my behalf only because I can't talk on behalf of others, but he's a very different character to the character that joined us. When he joined us, he was a mercenary. He was here for himself to win races. That desire to win hasn't disappeared, but what he's realised is you do it with a team and as a part of a team, and you become the greatest sportsman that exists as the result of it. One individual can't do it by himself.
Shav, how have you seen him change?
As James said, I think early on, he was... this sort of relentless desire to win every race would manifest itself in his driving, and he would just be pushing and couldn't stop. And I think now he's just becoming a much more calculating driver. He's from, the first lap of the first race, he's thinking about championships, he's thinking about looking after the car and the tyres a lot more. And as much as he hasn't got any better at losing races because that's just in his nature. Certainly his approach to the weekend and his thinking in the car and everything is just becoming really calculated and clean and clinical, to the point where, if someone asks you about Lewis making mistakes, you're thinking back and you're going back seasons often to try and recall the instances where it happens. He's just getting, his target is perfection, and that's a difficult target to pick, but that's what he's trying to achieve.
The relentlessness of Lewis Hamilton. It'll be fascinating to see how Lewis bounces back from the disappointment of Abu Dhabi, and you sense from listening to the Brackley boys that he'll come back stronger, don't you? Charles Leclerc was on the show back in July, and we spoke at length about his time at Ferrari, those wins in 2019, all of it juxtaposed against the loss of his great friend Antoine Hubert in a Formula 2 race at Spa the same year. When did you mourn the loss of your friend? Because you can't have had time with that weekend and then, of course, Monza the following weekend. Did it take a while to sort of hit home?
I think the week after was the funerals, and this kind of made me realize the whole thing, because once you are in the heat of the moment with the racing also, obviously you realize that you've lost a friend, but on the other hand, I was trying at my best to try and think about my race, because I still was starting the Sunday in pole position for a race, and I still had to go and try to win it. So I had to be on it. So it was very, very difficult, the preparation until the Sunday, and try to stay focused. But I will say at the funeral, then I kind of accepted the loss and try to not to forget it. I hate to say forget it, but to try and keep it in my mind, but in a more positive way.
How did his death, and of course Jules Bianchi before him, change your attitude to the sport?
It never really changed for me.
How come? I
don't know. I can't explain. Racing is my passion. It's my life. It's always been my life. I'm doing that since I am 3.5 years old. So since I'm very, very young. I probably didn't know when I was 3.5 years old that it was a dangerous sport. I've probably realized it a little bit later. But I knew it at one point that it was a dangerous sport, that things could happen, bad things could happen. Obviously, speaking about Jules, I've realized it with the incident of Jules. But for me, it was, every time I'm putting my helmet, I have a smile on. No other things in life can bring me such a smile. For me, the relationship with the sport is I'm happy whenever I put a helmet. I know that there's danger, but on the other hand, it's what makes me happy. So there are no questions for me.
Let's talk Monza. Full house, mad tifosi cheering you on. Pressure race. Lewis Hamilton right on your gearbox for lap after lap.
Yeah.
Special.
He can see the celebration starting. He's got one more corner, the famous parabolica to go. Mercedes threw everything at him today.
This race was incredible. I mean, the amount of pressure there was, not only the race day, but during the whole week. I think we started like the Tuesday or Wednesday by going to events in Milan. Was it in Milan? Yeah, I think it was in Milan, where there were a lot of fans. So there was a huge amount of support. And then Saturday, with the crazy qualifying there was, we just started on pole on Sunday. And you can just feel how much it means to Italy whenever you have an opportunity to win at Monza with Ferrari.
How did you get in and out of the track at Monza? Because you have to go through the fans to get to the paddock. How do you negotiate that as a Ferrari driver?
I'm always trying to stop as much as I can.
I thought they might put a bag over your head and just smuggle you in, otherwise you'd never get there.
No, not really. No. And I wouldn't want to do that. There's a lot of support, there are a lot of people, but I was trying to stop. I mean, it was taking quite a bit of time to get out of the track. But yeah, it's just such a nice feeling to be arriving at the track and to have so much support. It feels incredible. And that's what makes it also so special to be a Ferrari driver.
And that podium as well. It's mental, isn't it?
Yeah. I've still got images. I think these are images that will remain with me for the rest of my life. These moments that you can remember, every single details of it.
Outside the car, Charles is a man of many talents. Among many other things, he plays the piano in order to relax and to take his mind off racing.
I was playing very little when I was younger, but I've always enjoyed it, but never took any lessons or whatsoever. It was just to relax and that's it. And then with the first lockdown, I started again to get on the piano and became obsessed with it. Then bought more serious piano and got into lessons. I did probably 3 or 4 months of lessons. Once I knew how to read the music, basically I kind of stopped, even though I want to restart now, but just with the season, there are too many things to do that I cannot really have the time to take lessons, but I want to take them back. But yeah, overall, every time I've got like 10, 15 minutes free at home, getting on the piano and try to relax.
What is it about the piano?
I don't know, just music. It makes me relax. Otherwise, I just can't stop thinking about racing. So I'm just putting myself on the piano and think about everything else apart from racing.
The piano you can hear in that clip is Charles. He's great, isn't he? Let's hope that Ferrari comes up with a 2022 car to match his driving skills. There are more best bits to come, but first, for this ad break, take a moment to survey your thoughts. What are you holding on to? Let go of your to-do list and pending projects and just focus on your breath. We all need a few moments in the day where we're at one with ourselves, much like Charles and his piano playing. And Calm can help. Here at Beyond the Grid, we're proud to be partnering with Calm, the #1 mental wellness app, to give you the tools that improve the way you feel. New content is added every week to help you de-stress and clear your head with guided daily meditations. Or if sleep is something you're struggling with, Calm's imaginative sleep stories can help you drift off in no time. If you're anything like me, you might enjoy losing yourself in one of their nature soundscapes when you want to unwind, or switching to their selection of curated music tracks designed to help you focus when you find your concentration slipping. More than 100 million people around the world use Calm to take care of their minds. Sleep more, stress less, live better with Calm. For listeners of the show, Calm is offering a special limited time promotion of 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/grid. So go to calm.com/grid for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. That's calm.com/grid. Let's get back into it. Grand Prix can be won and lost by the finest of margins, which is why I love chatting to Alfa Romeo's chief strategist, Ruth Buscombe. She was fascinating about the goings-on the pit wall and the rivalries that exist in the pit lane.
I guess it's a little bit like, in most things, whether it's media or being a team principal or a driver or a strategist, kind of you'll know each other's worlds better than anybody else. And certainly, if you've had a very good day or a very bad day, maybe they're the only ones else in the world that actually truly understand that. I mean, Randy, who's a great guy, one of my good friends last week, tweeted something beautiful after his race win about the fact that he was contacted by every single team in the paddock.
And that's Randy at McLaren.
Randy C. McLaren. And that's what makes a great sport. I was raised to, shake the opposition's hand and say good game when they've done a better job than you and when you've been outraised. And I think that's the element of sport, and that's what it should be. I mean, now it'd be a fist pump or an air pump, but same premise applies.
Can we talk about some of the strategies that you're particularly proud of? First one I want to ask you about is Malaysia 2015. Sebastian Vettel's first win for Ferrari.
Sebastian Vettel, swerving, weaving, dancing to the checkered flag. He wins as a Ferrari driver for the first time in Formula One.
Oh, mi senti? Grazie mille ragazzi, grazie, dai, forza Ferrari!
Can you just talk us through how that came about and what it meant to you after the race?
So this was kind of a transition of heads of strategy at Ferrari. So we'd lost one head of strategy, and then there was a new head of strategy that was arriving for race 3. So it was a kind of a transitional period where all the kind of B team were effectively left holding the strategy baby for a couple of races until the new head of strategy was going there. So there was a lot of hunger.
And Ruth, how long had you been in Formula One at this point?
So this was my 4th season in Formula One. I'd started at the 2012 season, but I was still factory-based. So I was working in the factory, and there was just a brilliant group of engineers that were working in Maranello in the factory at that point. And it was a brief moment where actually there was a lot more responsibility that fell on people that had a lot of passion, were very smart and dedicated, and maybe necessarily didn't quite get that opportunity to shine. And I think that's what made that day very special, was that we were able to work together to come up with a strategy, even after some pretty intense quizzing by Aravabeni, who's still the scariest man I've ever had a conversation with.
I'm with you on that.
It's like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. And I remember turning around to the guys in the room and being like, don't worry, guys. There's never been like an early safety car in Malaysia, but we just need to pretend. We need to be confident, okay? We've done the work. We know the numbers. There's not going to be a safety car anyway. We've got to hold face, guys. And then even Seb questioned it. He was like, are you sure? And I was like, yes, I am. Like, deep voice, I'm very sure. And we were sure with the numbers, but it's still intimidating to be questioned. And then of course the safety car came out, and I was kind of immediately, my first thought was, oh God, like no, I've like manifested this safety car into being by saying there's not going to be a safety car. We're really confident in our numbers. We definitely know what we need to do. Then we did it, and we stayed out, and we did a 2-stop, and we were right. And it was a 2-stop, and we on that day beat the mighty Mercedes, which was a huge feat, and we knew from that day it would not be a winless season, which in Maranello is a big important thing. And I think that day when we came back, and they normally do a celebration lunch in Ferrari after a race win, was the first day I felt truly like I was in F1, despite having been in there for 4 years, because being a British woman in Ferrari, maybe you don't always feel 100% like you really belong there. And on that day, I truly felt like I belonged.
Malaysia 2015 was certainly a magical win, Ruth. And to hear so much joy in Seb's voice was wonderful. From one great car brand to another, while it wasn't a great season for Aston Martin on track, it was still fantastic to see them back in Formula One for the first time in 60 years. So who better to have on the show than Lawrence Stroll, the big boss? He's a man who doesn't usually give interviews, so it was a pleasure to speak to him and to hear about his plans for the team.
I think it's fair to say everyone recognises in the paddock that we're the next big thing to happen in Formula One. There definitely is that vibe. Actually, Sebastian himself told me that 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, when we were just sitting actually having lunch outside here in the hospitality. He says, it's just the vibe everywhere. Everyone's just talking that they all believe that we will be the next.
You've talked about the 5-year plan to win the world title. How's it going? Are you on schedule?
We are, very much so. I mean, as I said, there's several pieces to that plan. One is recruiting the best people. Second is giving them the best tools and processes to be able to fight for a world championship. And our case, tools and processes, is the brand new Aston Martin campus we're building, which is about 400,000 square feet. Nothing ever built like it before in Formula One. It'll be the state-of-the-art Formula One facility with we call it a campus because it'll be over 3 buildings. The main building, which will have all the DO and the manufacturing, R&D, and then there'll be a brand new wind tunnel, first new wind tunnel since I think it's 2004 in Formula One, and then we'll have a building in the center which will be for wellness and restaurants. We're going to have a nursery to take care of people's children. So it's really tools that would be needed to be fighting for world championships.
Have you enjoyed that process? Was it a blank sheet of paper? Right, lads, what do we need?
Yeah, well, it's a process that we started before COVID. We hoped the building would already be finished today. We had to put it on hold for close to 2 years because of COVID. But it's been a team process. It's everybody involved in the team of, in their department heads of what they needed in terms of premises and people in order to be fighting for the top. So it's been a fantastic experience, and it's, as I say, it's over 2 years now, basically on pause. Obviously, we've been working to improve it over those 2 years, but it's very exciting to see. We've started now building in Silverstone, so very exciting.
How does it differ to other factories you've been in? Obviously, there's Williams, but you've been involved with other teams as a sponsor as well. Has there been anything like this before in Formula One?
No, there'll be nothing at all like this. This will have our DNA, our culture, and it'll be, fit for purpose. Can't wait for it to be finished.
So the 5-year plan, we're on schedule, the factory's being built. Does Aston Martin have to win the world title to be regarded as success, the Formula One program to be regarded as a success?
No, it doesn't have to win a world title. It has to be fighting and contending for world championships. Winning would be the icing on the cake, but it has to have the ability every weekend to be able to win.
Such as the vagaries of sport, really, isn't it?
Listen, it's like every business I've ever run in my life. I obviously have a great track record of winning at everything I've done. There's nothing closer to my heart that I'm more passionate about than this business. And for me, winning here doesn't necessarily mean winning the world champion, but means have a winning team that's capable each weekend of winning the race.
The ambition of that man, to hear him listing what there is to come for the team, is quite extraordinary. And you sense that there have to be exciting times ahead for Aston Martin. Who doesn't love a shoey? The way Daniel Ricciardo's smile and shoes lit up the podium at Monza was something many fans will never forget. So it was great to have the Aussie back on the show to talk about that win and watching his hero, Ayrton Senna.
Daniel Ricciardo on course for his first victory since
redemption.
Monaco 2018. He left Red Bull, he went to Renault.
Holy mac and cheese balls, that's another podium.
He's gone to McLaren, he's going to get the victory now. It's McLaren and Ricciardo that win the Italian Grand Prix.
For anyone who thought I left, I never left.
Let's talk Monza then. Are you still somewhere in your mind on a high?
Parts of me, yeah. And I'm choosing to be. I am, because it's, not to a point where I'm walking around with my chest puffed out. It's not that, but I'm just choosing to still appreciate it, I guess, and enjoy it. It had been so long, and Yeah, but that high as well, the feeling of Monza and how many, I literally still haven't replied to all the messages. You know, it was insane how many people reached out, and that's just a nice feeling to have. So I feel bad just letting it go like that.
Were the emotions on the podium there comparable to Monaco in 2018?
Yeah. I think the only thing that it, let's say, lacked was the atmosphere. You know, there was not a full crowd and all of that. So maybe that was the only difference, but everything else, the emotions, the feeling, the relief, the happiness, all of it, the people around me, the team, the paddock, I was getting pats on the back from people from every different team and from the media. It was just really nice.
What was your reaction to the reaction? Were you quite humbled by it?
Yeah. I think it's, you know, it does make me proud. Like, I'm not going to deny that. And I will speak, just try to be honest about it and open, but it does make me proud. And it kind of shows me that I'm doing, or I've done something right in the sport, you know, where, because if I win, you know, no one should care more than me about winning, if you know what I mean. But I felt like so many people cared as much as I did, and so many people were as happy as I was. So that's, yeah, as you say, humbling, but it does make me proud, because I'm like, okay, I've obviously gone about this in a good way to have this effect on people. So it's nice, and I think it's definitely genuine, and I think that's probably what makes me proud, is that I've always been in this sport as me. I don't think it's changed me too much over the years. That sort of stuff is really, really cool.
And your trophy for that win now sits alongside Senna's at the MTC, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you were at Adelaide in 1993 as a wee man,
yeah.
but you were there, weren't you? Senna's last victory in Formula One. Does that feel a bit, do you even get emotional seeing that association?
I did, absolutely. When the emotion was that I didn't really have words, you know, I was speaking very slow and deliberate, because it was emotional. Because as long as I've been doing this, it still feels like the click of a finger. You know, I can take myself back to being a kid and putting F1 in this dream world.
Senna has given us a magnificent demonstration of how to go motor racing today. To win the last Grand Prix of 1993, a magnificent achievement for him, for McLaren and for Ford, and Ayrton Senna wins in Australia to the delight of his fans.
To be there and to see Senna, and I think just to see the trophy and to kind of have these visualizations, I guess, of him picking up that exact trophy on that day. And now for me to have a trophy that I picked up on the top step next to it. I was just trying to draw these, like, I don't know, parallels or whatever you call it, and it's like, how did I end up here? So I still do pinch myself, which I like. I like that because it does make me appreciate it.
Do you actually remember Adelaide 93? Because you were 4.
Yeah.
Do you really remember it?
Well, I do. So there's a photo of me and Dad on the pit wall, on like the start-finish straight after all the podium ceremony. And I do have like one photographic memory of sitting on the track and looking up at like the pit buildings. So I'm able to picture that now, and that's what I have.
I, for one, never thought you left, Daniel, and the vibe in the paddock after that win at Monza was truly awesome. Now, away from the track, Daniel remains as interesting as ever. Just take his love of live music.
Let's say on the, call it tougher days or harder days, there is certain things you miss, whether it's family, whether it's a bit of a social life, and that's something where music's always given me this, I guess, like beautiful escape. If I feel good, it'll make me feel better, and if I don't feel that good, it'll make me feel better. And I don't know, it's weird because I didn't grow up playing instruments. I don't have any music background, but I know that I have like a connection with music because it changes the way I feel, and I love watching someone, just perform. And
can you sing?
No, I mean I try, but I try as in I'm a shower singer, and if I'm in the car by myself, I'll sing. But I'm not. I wouldn't say I sing. I make noises. But also, you'll look around, say the venue, and everyone is engaged in the performance, so it's everyone's there with a kind of level of calmness and happiness, and it's even that itself, like the crowd itself, makes the experience quite nice.
It's great to know that I have something in common with Daniel Ricciardo. I'm a shower singer, and I loved what he had to say about the power of crowds. And it reminded me just how brilliant it was to have some spectators back at some Formula One races this year. After 5 years at Mercedes, Valtteri Bottas is moving on next year to Alfa Romeo. So we asked him on the show to reflect on his time with the Silver Arrows.
I'm proud, and now definitely knowing that, I'm continuing to another team. I've had time to a little bit reflect every now and then of the situation, because, we've achieved some pretty special things together. Now 4 times, hopefully 5th in a row as a constructor champion. And you do need good two drivers for that. And also, if you look at me and Lewis as teammates, if you look at the history of Formula One, the amount of points, wins, podiums we've got together, for me it's hard to try and name a better team. So I'm definitely proud, and the main thing is that I know that I've given everything. Like I can look in the mirror and say that I tried. I gave it everything I had. That's all I can do.
Does it eat away at you that you haven't won the World Championship?
For sure, yes, because that's ultimately since a kid. It's your goal, your dream, and it has been always really strong in my mind as a goal, and it's been a force that has kept me working hard. It's like every day, whatever I do for the sport, it's because of that. I want to be the best. I want to be the champion. So yeah, in a way, that kind of feels as a failure that I haven't been able to achieve that with Mercedes. But as I said earlier, on the other hand, I've tried everything I could have. I've given everything. So it just wasn't meant to be, at least for now.
I love Valtteri's straightforward honesty, both in what he says and his general attitude towards Formula One. Perhaps, as he says, the title wasn't meant to be this time around, but let's see what the future holds. Away from the track, Valtteri's love of coffee made me smile. Let's just say his caffeine intake has gone up a notch or two. Now look, what about this passion for coffee, right? Is it something you just do for Instagram, or is it a genuine passion? Can we call it an addiction?
Yeah, it is addiction and passion, and especially good coffee. People drink so much coffee in the world.
I've just got to interrupt you, right? So obviously people can't see your face right now, but you've suddenly put your serious face on. We're talking about coffee here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's an important thing. And I want to encourage people to drink more good coffee and from good sources, because there's massive differences on like a bulk type of coffee, where it comes from, how it comes from, how much actually the coffee farmers get out of it, etc. So I'm one of the owners of one coffee roastery in Finland, and we work really directly with the farmers and trying to minimize any middleman taking cuts and so on. And it's great quality coffee, and it's roasted with passion. And yeah, for me, it's an important thing.
Now, what does your trainer, Antti, make of this coffee? Because purely from a professional sportsman point of view, does it have side effects, negative side effects? Because obviously it gives you that boost, but also I guess it has the opposite effect as well.
If you have too much coffee, yes, it can have negative side effects. In endurance sports, it can lead to stomach cramps, it can lead to nervousness, high heart rate. But if you can optimize the caffeine intake, there actually is benefits proven in endurance sports and also in terms of your focus. So I always try to find that optimal peak of the caffeine boost before the race start.
What, so quick espresso before you go to the grid?
For me, what works well is between 100 and 120 milligrams of caffeine before a race, let's say 45 minutes before. That's like the optimal.
And I love this story you told me the other day of you being a judge at the Finnish Coffee Championships. How many shots of coffee was it? Did you say 27 shots?
I think it could have been 27, yes.
Yeah, and the other judges obviously spat it out, but you chose not
I did
to.
it. Yeah, I didn't. It's same like if I go for wine tasting, I don't spit it out. Same with coffee. So, but that was too much. That was too much coffee. But an interesting thing because, obviously you teach your palate to learn about differences in coffee, and you just start to pick up more and more things the more you try different things.
Right, last question on coffee. When you're tasting a really good coffee, just describe it on the palate. What does it taste of?
The beauty of coffee, every coffee bean or brand and how it's roasted, it is different. But if I would describe my favorite type of coffee, it's almost like a tiny bit fruity, really smooth, low in acidity, maybe hint of caramel and milk chocolate.
Before we move on to our next clip, let me help you cross something off your Christmas to-do list. If you're looking for a fun and unique gift for a loved one, then look no further than Babel. Yes, Babel is the best way to say Feliz Navidad, Joyeux Noël, or even Buon Natale this year. That's right. It doesn't matter whether they dream of being fluent in French, impress in Italian, or sparkle in Spanish. With Babel, you can help them get a head start on their New Year goals and learn a new language with just 15-minute daily lessons. There are 14 different languages to choose from, and what's fantastic is that they design the courses with practical, real-world conversations in mind. So you're learning things you'll actually use in everyday life, and it's all thanks to the fact that their lesson plans are designed by real-life language experts. And because it's available as an app or online, you can log on and take a lesson whenever and wherever you want, and your progress will be synced across all devices. That's what makes Babel the perfect gift for anyone this Christmas. And right now, you can give the gift of language to someone special. Go to babbel.com/mygift and give the gift that really keeps on giving. That's Babel, babbel.com/mygift. But for now, let's get back to our best bits. The stars kept on coming this year, and it was a real pleasure to speak to Fernando Alonso in Qatar. I caught up with him on the eve of the race, and he was extremely relaxed and forthcoming, even if we were all struggling with jet lag after a 15-hour flight from Sao Paulo.
That's one of the things that did change on my career. When I was younger, I could sleep in any country, in any time. Jet lag was not a problem. And now it's not a big thing, but I feel that I need more days to get used to a new time zone.
And how does that affect your performance in the car?
Not much. I have to say that when you are in the car, there are no limitations on the physical aspect, or it seems like your body is switching on, and the adrenaline is so high, the focus is so high that you tend to forget whatever problem you have in that moment, physically or mentally. You completely get absorbed by the car.
So even mentally, that's the case as well?
Yeah, because I felt that sometimes I get some worries on my head, or I have some maybe personal issues or other things that are happening in the previous days or even that day. And then you close the visor, you leave the pit lane, and for that period of time, you completely forget about anything that happened until that moment.
We've just come off the back of a titanic world title fight between Lewis and Max. And Fernando is a driver who knows just how well you need to perform in order to beat Lewis, something he learnt when they were teammates at McLaren.
I think with Lewis, we didn't have, let's say, the competition that I was looking for. It's true that in 2007, we shared the team, and that's for the general people, the biggest fight you could have. But in 2007, I think we both were not ready. Understandably, he was not maybe ready for the fight because he was a rookie and coming into Formula One, and I was, not performing at my best, not really integrated with the team, And for sure, we had all the fights together and all the stress together to fight for the championship. And we were not well managed at that time. And all the 2007 thing that, we finished with the same points in the championship, which you could see as a very big fight and even fight. But I think we both could have done better. And then in the following years, I had a better package, I think, in Ferrari than him when he was in McLaren, so we didn't fought really directly. And now when he switched to Mercedes, he had a better package, and we never had the opportunity again to fight together. So that's a missing point in my career. But obviously he's a legend of the sport, and he, again, like Michael, push you to the limit, because if you want to beat Lewis, you need to perform at your best.
Compliments don't come much bigger than what Fernando just said about Lewis. And it shows just how good Max must have been this year. And it was also interesting to hear Fernando speak so frankly about what winning another world championship would mean to him.
It will mean a lot, for sure. But I don't know. It's not that I'm desperate to get it, and that will change my whole career, or it will change my way of seeing the sport. I'm a competitive person, as we touched before. Everything I do. So I'm really looking forward to the third championship, and I will do what is in my hands, and even more in the next coming years. But it will mean a lot in terms of maybe a legacy after my career, finishing Formula One, of how to always push to the limit, always try to find the excellence on things you do, having a very high discipline in the way you do races, in the way you approach racing. It doesn't matter if you are 19 or it doesn't matter if you are 42 or 43. It's a way of living and a full dedication to the sport. That probably is the biggest thing if I win the third championship, that kind of legacy and message for future generations.
I'm sensing that if the 22 car is good, you're going to be here beyond 22.
Ah, yes, I will be. And even if the car is not so good, but my plan is to stay at least 2 or 3 years more.
Talking of world champion drivers, my next clip is from my conversation with Paddy Lowe. Paddy is a technical genius, but he's also worked with some of the best drivers of the modern era. What makes them so good?
For me, it's sort of great privilege that I've been able to work with that terrific range of world champions and, enjoyed every minute of it. And particularly, to enjoy the differences between them all. They're all unique characters, both in terms of their driving and their racecraft, but also as human beings. So then I'm not answering your question yet. Honestly, I can't sort of pull out and say, the best. Or clearly, Lewis is an incredible force to be reckoned with in that, for all that he achieved. And particularly, for me, like I mentioned, the first season, the first 9 podiums is actually one of the greatest things I've ever seen firsthand in terms of race driving. But, Nigel, where do you start with Nigel? I actually would say the most exciting driver I ever worked with, and in many ways, the most rewarding for the engineer, because actually when Nigel put a car around a lap, you absolutely knew he'd wrung its neck. There was nothing left, because Nigel's commitment was 1,000%. He put his whole body and mind literally into that lap. And, that was incredible to behold. And I worked with people who weren't great fans of Nigel. And even they, you could see they were like, okay, I've got to hand it to him. That was incredible. Mika was a great driver to work with, really good fun, so fast and so lateral thinking in his approach.
That's interesting. What do you mean by a lateral thinker in a driving sense?
Mika had no fear of a car. So, anything you want to try, he's going to give it a go because, he was a master at the car. Nothing was going to be too difficult. We sat and brainstormed one day while waiting for an engine change, as you had to do back then, and came up with the idea of a hand throttle because he said, hand's much nearer my head than my foot. It's got to be better. And we actually built it and tried it. It didn't work for various reasons, but, he's one of the few drivers that would have given that a go.
I love that story about Hakkinen wanting a hand throttle. Seems mad, really, but it says a lot about Mika that he wanted to try it. On the technical front, Paddy's seen a lot. He was the brains behind one of the most audacious technical innovations ever, last seen in the early 1990s. For those people listening who don't know or don't understand active suspension, can you just explain how it worked? That version, those early versions of it.
Yeah, there are many types of active suspension, but essentially, a passive suspension, which is what most road cars have and modern day Formula One, is something where no energy is added to the suspension from anywhere except, from road disturbance. So, you have dampers and springs, but they're all reacting or even dissipating energy that's come from the road. Whereas an active, you're applying energy. And in this case, it comes via hydraulics. So you have a hydraulic pump, which is supplying that hydraulic energy. In this case, it was to actuators on each corner. And there are two roles of a suspension on a racing car. One is to absorb the variation in track surface, so the bumps in the road, in effect. The other is to maintain a ride height or a ground clearance or an attitude for aerodynamic reasons. Actually, on a racing car, that second is by far the most important. So the main delivery of the Williams active suspension was that we could maintain an attitude of the car, much like an aeroplane, that we wanted at all times, rather than one that was simply a function of the passive deflection of a passive suspension in response to aerodynamic load.
What gave you more lap time, traction control or active suspension?
That was the funny thing, actually, because we'd spent, all together, including the early work by Frank, maybe 8 years on the active suspension, complicated system, expensive, and that was worth about a second a lap. And then at the last minute, late 91, as we were getting ready to race the active for 92, we introduced traction control and first ran that with Damon Hill at a Ricard test, winter 91. And he actually came in, again, no simulator, with no idea what this thing was going to do. You just, in principle, thought, there was no rig to test it. We just came up with an algorithm, put it on there, sent him out. And he came in and said, "No, I don't like this. It's holding me back," he said. "I can feel it holding me back," because it's cutting cylinders on the exit. And we said, "Yeah, well, that's all very well, but you are a second a lap quicker."
And then what did Damon say?
I can't remember what he said at that point, but, that was it. Then we were racing it.
Lap time is king in Formula One. Traction control, active suspension. Formula One is a breeding ground for innovation. And judging by the feedback we get from you guys, you really enjoy hearing from the engineers in the sport. Those technical innovations that Paddy was talking about first appeared at Williams. So let's stay with the team now and wind the clock back to the late 90s, when Jacques Villeneuve made the switch from IndyCar to Formula One. He joined the Grove outfit as Damon Hill's teammate in 1996 and won the world title the following season. His race engineer was Jock Clear, and he remembers it all like it was yesterday.
I sort of liked the fact that he was a bit of a rebel. You've got to look at this in the context of driving for Williams. Williams was, and still is, a fantastic team, a team in the real sense of the word team. Everything about working at Williams was just about Frank and Patrick, and a really, really healthy dynamic with all of the people in the team, with the drivers. And a lot of people talk about, but Williams never treated their drivers well. I don't think you'll find a driver that would ever have much complaint about how they enjoyed their time at Williams. They'll find occasions where they'll say, "Oh yeah, Frank said this," or "Patrick used to do this," or "You had no respect for me." But actually, if you said to them, "Okay, so did you enjoy your time at Williams?" Absolutely, they thoroughly enjoyed their time at Williams. So this was a really great team dynamic, but it was all about Frank and Patrick. And actually, to the extent that the drivers, were really quite sort of oppressed at times, and obviously I wasn't there when Prost was there, and maybe it was very different with a driver of his caliber, but certainly I was there with Damon, and he struggled to get his voice heard at times. So actually Jacques arriving as this young kid with no real track record, apart from having won Indy, of course, which is quite a track record, but in Europe it counts for nothing. Patrick had very little respect for the fact that he'd won Indy 500 and the Indy Car Championship. And so the fact that Jacques was willing straight away to defend his corner and put up a fight if he didn't agree with what was going on. And I don't mean in areas that he shouldn't be involved, just in what he needed when he was driving the car. This is how it is. I need this, or I could do with that. He wouldn't be told otherwise.
Did he have a quirky driving style?
Oh God, yes.
I've sort of
everything was quirky about. I mean, any other driver gets in his car, they're not going to be able to drive it. It had a stupidly short throttle pedal throw. So most drivers nowadays have about 50 millimeters, 70 millimeters of throttle travel. So that's at the ball of your foot. You're traveling 50 millimeters, 70 millimeters to have the modulation. The shortest I've known anybody else is about 45. Jacques had 22. Now, 22 millimeters is nothing. But anything longer than that, and he was like, "No, this throttle pedal's far too long. I can't drive that." Patrick would be like, "What on earth is this idiot doing? Does he have any understanding about how a bloody racing car works?" But he wouldn't be told. I don't care what Patrick says. I want, that is too long.
Why did he want such a short travel?
Who knows? It's one of those things like, people often talk about drivers' seats and how specific they are. And again, his seat, his steering wheel, I used to have to hand build his steering wheels. And again, Patrick used to go mental. Patrick would come up into the back of the garage and I'd be there doing another steering wheel with a load of tape and blue tack, making it the shape Jacques wanted. Because back then, they didn't have moulded grips. They all have moulded grips now that suit their hand. But they didn't then. They just had a normal rim, just like you did in your road car, when it was just a bit smaller. And of course, Jacques said, if I can grip it properly, then actually I have more control, which is quite logical, which is why all drivers now have moulded grips. But back then nobody did, and it was good enough for Alain Jones, so why does bloody Villeneuve have to have moulded grips? Well, I said, if the kid says he'll go quicker with moulded grips, I'm going to give him moulded grips. So I did them by hand. And of course, if everybody like, "Patrick, come in, quick, put it under the bench." "All right, Patrick, yeah." But if he caught me doing another, "Doc, how many times have I told you, leave those bloody steering wheels alone, wasting our bloody time." But it was great. That was what Williams was all about. And don't get me wrong, Patrick loved having Jacques there. He'll tell you now that Jacques was not a very good racing driver and actually bloody nearly threw away a championship with a very good car. But he doesn't really mean that. He enjoyed that dynamic for sure, because he likes shouting at people, and Jacques gave him lots to shout about.
Jacques was such a quirky driver, wasn't he? I mean, just imagine feeding 700 brake horsepower through throttle travel of just 22 millimetres. Just extraordinary. And we'll end this show with Patrick Head, the technical genius behind Williams when they were in their pomp. I spoke to Patrick before Sir Frank sadly passed away last month, but we still spoke at length about his former business partner.
Between you and I, nobody else knowing at all, he really did not know much about the engineering of Formula One. But he was clever enough to know that, and he treated it as a bit of a joke. I could see all the problems ahead in any time, and I'm not saying for one moment I was a depressive. I was never a depressive. But Frank, he was like that puppet on television, Tigger. It didn't matter what was failing, what was happening. Frank could put his head on the pillow at 10 o'clock at night and boom, he was out. And wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, fully refreshed, and come to work saying, "Okay, chap, let's go for it." He was always totally positive, whereas I could foresee problems that Frank just wasn't even aware of and didn't even look for. So we made a good mix between the two of us. And if ever I sat down in Frank's office and said, "Oh, Frank, this problem, that problem," Frank would say, "Don't worry, chap, we'll sort it out." He wouldn't necessarily tell me how to do it, but he was always very positive, and that was very good for me.
Did you agree on most things, or would you have a stand-up row if you disagreed, or how were disagreements overcome?
Sometimes we'd have the good manners to talk things through. If Frank, I thought, was taking a direction which I thought was completely and utterly wrong, then I'm a complete pussycat now, Tom, but I'm told in those days I had a reputation of being fairly aggressive. And if I thought Frank was completely barking up the wrong tree, then I think I'd tell him so. I might have used the word no.
What about the dynamic between you and Frank after his car crash? How did that change?
It certainly changed. Frank, as is well known, I think he's the oldest quadriplegic by decades. And the positive attitude that I spoke about before, he applied to his life. He was always very keen to compete. Before his accident, he was, as I said, he was like Tigger. He was, very annoying at times, but bounding with energy and going off for 20-mile runs all the time. And
is it true that he went for a run every day?
Every day, yeah.
Did you ever join him?
No, I was never, ever. In fact, there was a picture that had been seen of, must have been sort of the early days with Alan Jones, 1979 or something, 78 maybe it was, with Frank and Alan both in tracksuits running off from our first factory. Well, I think as soon as the photographer had that picture, Alan turned around and walked back to the factory and came in for a cup of tea because Alan was not a runner. And it was very much stayed. But Frank would have gone on and done 10 miles. He did 10 miles every day and was very fit. And I think when they had that running race around Silverstone and a lot of the people in Formula One were runners, and Frank won it by miles. He was a serious runner.
Some lovely words from Patrick there. And I love the thought of Frank being like Tigger. Rest in peace, Frank. And that wasn't the only bit of gold from Patrick. What he said about Imola 94 and how Damon Hill helped lead the team thereafter was also incredibly powerful.
After the accident on Sunday, the car was impounded down at Imola, Ayrton's car, damaged car, and Damon's car got back on the Monday. I think the Monday was a bank holiday in England. The senior engineers all came in. We had the data from the data recording on board the car, Ayrton's car. Damon came in, and Damon was very involved in the analysis of the data because obviously for Damon, he wanted to know what had caused the accident. I don't think he wanted to carry on looking at the data onward because ongoing, there was a lot of analysis of the data. But once Damon had convinced himself that it wasn't the car that failed, which he did satisfactorily to his own satisfaction, Damon led the team forward. At Monaco, 2 weeks later, we were a one-car team. Our test driver, David Coulthard, came into the team for the next race, Barcelona, after Monaco. And Damon was, you've got to remember, he was up against a very, very capable Michael Schumacher, who had won the first 2 or 3 races. And Damon was integral in leading the team mentally out of the car as well as in the car. So Damon's personality was very strong in terms of leading the team out of a very difficult time. And through the circumstances were very complicated with Michael being banned for a couple of races. But it ended up with us going to the last race of the year with 1 point or something between the two of them. So it was a very, very stressful season, obviously with the highest stress of all being the fact that Ayrton had been killed in one of our cars. So it was not an easy year at all. But For me, Damon's leadership of the team and his achievements on the track in 94 stand above his 96 championship year. Obviously, history will put him down as the 96 champion, but his achievements in 1994 were stunning, absolutely stunning.
I wonder how Damon feels on hearing that. To hear those clips again sends a shiver down my spine. Well, folks, that pretty much rounds out the show and season 4 of Beyond the Grid. A huge thank you to you for listening and to all our guests for their time. It's been fun. I've loved every minute of every conversation. It's almost time to clock off for Christmas, but before we go, I wanted to share with you some of the comments you sent in about Kimi Räikkönen after last week's show. We're all going to miss Kimi, aren't we? Kay Flub had this to say: in this podcast, Kimi talks more than during his entire career. What a gift. What a legend. It's funny, Kay. Kimi had this reputation of being a man of few words. Yet when you got him going, he was always a good talker, even when he was starting out 20 years ago. Let's go next to this from Kimi Uwu. This podcast was fantastic, and the sport will undeniably miss Kimi. It makes me proud to be Finnish and proud to be named after this legend. Thank you for this interview. I still remember watching so many of his amazing races. Brazil 2007 is just unforgettable. Truly the end of an era. Thank you, Kimi. And thanks to you, Kimi. Cool name, by the way. As you can imagine, we got scores of messages about the Kimi show. He was a fan's favourite, but let's end with this from Nameless. I just hope Kimi is remembered for his speed and racecraft rather than his meme-worthy moments. Sure, he's funny, but Kimi is a pure racer. He was truly incredible. He was indeed Nameless, and thanks for getting in touch. And Kimi, good luck once again for whatever comes next in your life. Well, folks, that's it for another year. Thanks again for all the support. I hope you've enjoyed the shows and enjoy the holidays. Beyond the Grid is produced by F1 in association with Audio Boom Studios. Until next year, keep it flat out.